for anybody or just your two brothers?
Okay. Well, we'll find out. It's recording.
Okay, so we're going through the text Mareh Yaakov. This was the life's work of Dr. Jacob Seaman, and we have already had a couple of classes, but what we're going to do is we're going to try and summarize what we did in the first two shiurim to catch everybody up, and from the beginning that we give today, hopefully you'll be able to study along with us as we go to further. You can talk, Alan. It's okay. Alan Robbins is here, and he's making great contributions. So the introduction to the book goes over a couple of topics. It goes over a family history and a dedication of the book to all of the family of Dr. Seaman. It starts with a section on why he's chosen this name, and he's chosen it for a couple of reasons. Great works of interpretation often are named after a sentence, after a pasuk in Torah, and he quotes the sentence, "Vayomer Elokim leYaakov b'marot halayla," and God spoke to Jacob in visions at night, and Vayomer Yaakov Yaakov, and he said, Jacob, Jacob. The great doctor's name was Yaakov, and this obviously is inspiration that came to him throughout the years. So it's Marot, or Mareh Yaakov. He derives it from the sentence in Genesis. The main focus of the book is to look at hints and symbols that are derived from the reading marks in the Torah to give it a further dimension and further interpretation that draws on a variety of sources. And again, his last name, spelled especially in Hebrew, is Siman, which means sign or symbol. And again, that fits with the book. And he states the book is a fulfillment of his mother's prayer, candlelighting, when she would say in Yiddish, are we going to pause, or we're going to keep on going? Where she would say in Yiddish, "Vine organ velen liften in der Hegel Torah." We should open up your eyes with the light, and you should acquire Torah. He goes through the various techniques that he's going to use in terms of interpretation, and we went through these at length in a previous session. Suffice it to say, he uses many of the classic derivations and formulas that are used by a variety of other interpreters, by some of the things that Rashi will bring forward, some of the things that Rambam and Sforno will bring forward, a lot of the things that Balaturim will bring forward. He brings in Kabbalah, he brings in Tanakh, he brings in Talmud, he brings in science and history and archaeology, and there is a large influence of Kabbalah on the work as well. So just for your sake, we're going through a very quick review just so that it'll be on tape. We haven't done anything new. Don't worry. It's not to be silent just because the camera is running. If you have a question or a comment, by all means, that's part of the experience here. So we decided that there was a lot of depth and mysticism that is especially focused in the introduction on the very few first words in Parshat Bereshit. And we're going to get back to that very much later once we've really gotten into the text and into the way that the text flows. So we moved from here to the idea of what Ta'ameh HaMikra. So if you want to follow along, we're in the introduction, page LXI, page 61. And we briefly said that he is disappointed with the English translation of the words Ta'ameh HaMikra, literally the reasons or the taste of the way that we read things. He was very disappointed that the English translation is the way that you sing it the way that you sing it, or cantileates or cantillans, so the way that it's cantillated, the way that it's sung out loud. He feels that that's really a secondary role of the notes, and that they do add primary interpretation and primary sentence structure, which is missed by just simply interpreting them as the musical notes that go along with Torah. He makes a general comment that there are several different tunes that these notes are put to, and yet each note will have its own particular features even when it's in the different tunes. So there is a different tune for Torah reading, for Haftorah reading, for Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur Torah reading, for Megillat Esther, for the other Megillot, for Megillat Eicha, and all of these general concepts of tune give a flavor or an air to the book as a whole. So, for instance, he says that the Rosh Hashanah tune gives us this sense of elevation of Malchut, a little bit more pomp and circumstance, but also a little bit of trembling and trepidation, a little bit held back. Whereas that uncompromising sense of elevation is what you get in Megillat Esther, and you get a sorrowful tune for Eicha, and grades in between for all of the other various tunes that go with the different readings. He also notes that there are three books whose way that they are sung has unfortunately been lost to us. The books of Eov, Mishlei, and Tehillim have the same symbols above them, and yet they're in a pattern that cannot be sung with the tunes in the way that we know how to sing now. So the first letters of these three books, Aleph for Eov, Mem for Mishlei, Tet for Tehillim, spell the word Emet, spell truth, and we have lost some of the truth by not being able to have this tune for those books anymore.
Okay. So what you say about the tune, so the tune would vary from Haftorah to Torah to Eov, but you said since there's a Tamei Nikra in this broader sense, mean all these other meanings aside from just the tune, so that would be uniform, like a Tevir would be the same meaning in Torah as in Tehillim and Esther.
So certainly across all the books, with the possible exception of Eov, Mishlei, and Tehillim, yes.
Okay,
with Eov, Mishlei, and Tehillim, not sure.
Okay.
We don't know.
Okay.
In researching further, there are, in fact, and he doesn't mention this in the book, there are in fact some early versions of Mishnah that have notes to them as well. And again, the tune to that has also been lost.
Are these the same notes like Matat Pashta?
Apparently, I haven't been able to find a copy yet. I have a friend whose father deals in antiquities, and I'm seeing if he can dig up at least a photocopy or tell me where he can get me a page or two to look at. And we'll see what I've read at least about that topic. The notes that are in Mishnah are there more a memorization aid than anything that adds extra interpretation or meaning. He then goes through the history of the reading marks and dates them back, in his opinion, to Anshe Knesset Hagdolah. There truly is no single composer or person who wrote this, so he felt that it was codified by committee, and he feels that it is definitely part of Misorah, things that were given directly at Mount Sinai, and therefore they have an elevated meaning and an elevated sense about them, and they are placed purposefully to add meaning, to compare, to contrast, as all the other words in Torah are. They are not just randomly located, but also what they're next to has meaning, and when you see similar patterns here and there, that has meaning. So by placing these notes as part of Misorah, he infers that they have that same level of meaning. The Misorah in terms of being formalized, there are two times in Jewish history when this happens. One is around 300 before the Common Era, where we have a meeting called the Anshe Knesset Hadolah. This is a group that gathers amongst it some of the last of the prophets and the various leaders of the Jewish community who decide that as prophecy is leaving the world, they need to make things in Judaism codified so that there is no question whatsoever as to the correct truth that was given from generation to generation, and that there could not be arguments amongst future generations because there was no longer somebody who could directly ask what the truth was with the loss of prophecy. In the 3rd century after, between the 3rd century and the 6th century after of the Common Era, there was a further codification where we get the Gemara being composed, and there are also people who work on all of the texts, all of the books of Tanakh, to again try to codify every vowel, every pause, and every note, and to have them recorded in their finality. When you look at some of the commentaries, particularly one called Minchat Shai, he will go over texts that are brought later on that seem to have minor differences between various sources. So, for instance, Rambam will say this letter has a dot in it, whereas most people don't. And he will bring a consensus view, or bring a view from the strongest supporting text that he's got, to say that this is the way that it remains codified after that. So again, we see that throughout Jewish history, unfortunately, we tend to sometimes lose the best and brightest and most scholarly amongst us, and things have a tendency to get lost.
I just tried.
Nonetheless, there has been exceeding effort and determination to make sure that the text, with all of its notes, with all of its accents, with all of its vowels, and with all of its extraneous marks, dots on top of words, letters that have dots that don't get pronunciation, and yet we preserve that. So all of those things have been saved to try to derive the meaning that truly is there inside of them. And again, things that are written one way, pronounced another way, Ktiv and Kri, written and pronounced, written and read. All of those things, again, deeply preserved. Minchat Shai quotes a story about when there was a very famous Balkori, a very famous person who would read the Torah, who had an argument with the rabbi as to whether he should, in fact, pronounce the word as it's written, or pronounce it as we have the tradition, as we have the Masorah, as the Kri. So he wanted to read the Ktiv, he wanted to read the way that it was written. And the decision in his case was in fact Chayrim. He was excommunicated for deciding to follow that and not following the Masorah, the tradition that we have. So we hold it very strongly. And
who was right, the Bakor or the rabbi?
Bakor.
Oh, okay.
This is a section that we didn't actually go through before, so we're on page LXII, we're on page 62.
The Stephen Creed, the Balkor, it should go according to the Creed.
We're in the middle where he says remark.
Where are you again?
Page LXII, page 62.
Oh,
in the middle of the page where he says in big letters remark. So there are several chapters in the Zohar that discuss the notes. They discuss the notes more as a connection between upper worlds and our current world. And I think we need sort of a brief introduction to this concept, just to understand this next section. So the Kabbalists divide our reality into various worlds. We are currently in the Olam Ha'asiyah, the lowest of the four worlds that are defined. This is the world of things that are made, things that are established, and it's divided into two sections. It's divided into a ruchani, a spiritual section, and a gashmi, and a physical section. This world is finite. This world has consequences, and we can barely perceive the concept of a world that is above us. The world that is above Olam Ha'asiyah is Olam HaYitzirah, the world of formation. So we can barely get the concept that this world is created yesh me'ayin. This world all of a sudden pops into existence from nothing. And some of the concepts and things that we see here obviously have derivation from higher thoughts and higher plan. Things don't seem to happen randomly as far as civilization goes, even though those of us who have studied physics know that the entropy of the universe is increasing. When you look at people and populations in history, it seems that we have an anti-entropic force. We have things that work to create more organization, not less. So somewhere there is something flowing down to us that seems to be out of this worldly. And some of the references to predicting the future, to prophecy, to being able to understand the workings of nature seem to come from this one level above us. So this level is hinted at. We're going to go through some of the sentences in Bereshit where man is created.
But you get there.
So the first concept is that God and the minions of creation have a discussion. It says, Na'aseh Adam b'tzalmenu kidmutenu. We're going to make, from the word asiyah, from that lowest world, we're going to make man the same as the rest of all the animals in Olam Ha'asiyah. He's going to be completely gashmi, he's going to be completely physical. He might have some spirit to him, but he will have nothing of any world above him. And then we get Vayitzer Hashem Elokim et Adam. God created man from Olam HaYitzirah. God decided that if he made man from this lower world, that he would have no ability to reach above himself, and he gave him the ability to have some tiny spark of the world above him inside of him. And the Kabbalistic teachings tell us that there are a variety of different emanations of the first man that comes, and perhaps one of these is an earlier version, and then we have a later version, and then Bara Elokim et Adam. We have the world above it, Olam HaBriyah. We have the concept of something has to yet again flow into this Yitzirah, into this sense of causing things to boil down into the finite. Something has to come from that when you're going from infinite and boiling your way down. And that is the Olam HaBriyah. The infinite world that is above it, the Olam HaAtzilut, is the dimension that we really have no ability to access other than in an intellectual sense. It has no equivalent in our world. There's no bara. There's no word that focuses this.
You're talking about Briah or Atzilut now?
Atzilut. I'm gonna back up because there is Vayatzel min haruach asher alav.
With the Eldon Medad.
So when Moshe gives smicha to the 70 elders and the 2 extras, it says that Moshe used that word atzilut. So I will have to find a Kabbalistic source and see if that in fact corresponds to that or not. That Moshe perhaps had a touch of Olam HaAtzilut in him. But unfortunately, I am not up to speed on my Kabbalah, and I am seeking an appropriate chavruta, because if I'm going to continue teaching this course, I can't do it without further guidance.
By the way, that's interesting. I just thought of it when you said the 70 and the 2 extras, and 72, and one of Hashem's names is 72 letters. And 4 times sky.
So, again, from this concept of these variety of worlds that boil down finally into our finite world, we are now in the middle of page LXII, middle of page 62.
Sorry,
Mark.
Did I miss our 4th world yet? Olam Asiyah, Olam
So,
Atzilut.
Atzilut, Briah, Yetzirah, and Asiyah.
Sorry, so Atzilut is the highest.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. And then Briut, the Briah. Yeah.
It's conceptually easier to do it from the bottom to the top because we recognize things from the bottom. Each world is created yesh me'ayin, from the one above. It seemingly comes from nothing, and you can perhaps peer a little bit into one level above you and conceptualize 2 levels above you, but have no idea of what 3 levels above you really means.
Yetzirah is to form,
Mm-hmm.
so that's the concept is different from ex nihilo, whereas Briah, above it, is the formation, and then
Mm-hmm.
it trickles down, or is the creation, and then trickles down to the next world as formation, and then trickles down as something finite with borders. Is that the pathway?
Somewhat, but each of the worlds has an existence in and of itself, has a complete existence, just as we can live just fine, not conceptualizing anything above us that this came from. Each one is sealed and above. So it's not such a direct path as you create something and then you something you've taken, you formed it into something, and then finally you've got something that's made. That's a more macro. It's a more macro concept of that. You have to create the conditions that you can have something to form, that you're going to finally get something. But each world in and of itself is self-contained, has its own existence, has its own emanations from what is above it, and pipes down to what is below it.
Pipe down.
So again, when you get into Kabbalistic teaching, Sinorot, pipes are defined as pathways through which you can infer what is the world above, what the world one level above you is. So, remark in the middle of the page, Kabbalists of the opinion that our present Torah, Beit, again, Torah begins with the letter Beit for Breshit, with a very large Beit to signify that it's not just a part of the word Reshit, but a separate entity in and of itself, and has some standing in and of itself, and the concept is that this world flows out of that letter Beit. And the world of Bria, Olam HaBria, this highest thing that we might have some ability to conceptualize, gets its sense from Olam HaAtzilut, gets its sense from the highest world, which we have no idea how to really conceptualize. And Kabbalists say that this is flowing from Atzilut to Bria through the Talmei HaMikra, through the notes. So this is perhaps the highest of secrets that are there, and we're trying to derive from that level. And as I said, there are many chapters in Zohar that discuss how the qualities of each note allow emanations to go from one world to another. So he calls these notes, therefore these guiding marks represent a component of the original Torah from the supreme world, from Olam HaAtzilut.
Jeff, do these worlds coexist in the same time and space? That is, for example, we see each other as creatures that have physicality and 3 dimensions and so on and so forth. We are made of tissues, and our tissues are made of molecules. But you can live perfectly well as a creature and be totally oblivious to the molecules that have their own laws and their own world. And they occupy the same space.
No, it would be more like looking a dimension above. So the first dimension is a point, the second dimension is a line, all the points that you can line up going infinitely in either direction. The third dimension would have the ability to go in an X, Y, and a Z axis. The fourth dimension would be all of the possibilities of your X, Y, and Z axis through time. So whatever would happen through that. The fifth dimension would be all of the possible things that could happen at different times that would change the world and would cause different things to emanate from that. So all of those possibilities fits into the next dimension, and beyond that, we don't you can see there are mathematics, in fact, that Kabbalistically match, I believe, the numbers 11 and 22, which, according to some of Rabbi Tatz's lectures, match some of the theoretical physics that need to be used to work out Big Bang equations and so on. They exactly match the number of dimensions that is predicted by Kabbalah. And yet we have really no words to conceptualize what each one of those is. So do these worlds occupy the same space? No. They are inclusive of, each world is inclusive of the world below and of other possibilities for the world below. And each world above that is inclusive of the world below it and all the possibilities of that, and so on.
By the way, we never mentioned this. This is another thing. That the Beit, when you write in the Sofrut, every pay, it's like black and white. The negative in a picture, black and white. Every pay has a Beit in it. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes, I understand.
So this
Positive
is that
space and the negative space.
No, the letter
The
pay.
black
The positive.
and the
Right.
white.
I thought you were saying paper positive. So that mirrors what we're talking about. Bereishit, that it's not the whole story. There's 3 other, because the Beit itself is encompassed by a pay around it, and it's like the peh Hashem starting all, and Hashem created the world with and you see the peh around the Beit.
Okay, so again, in the sense of just making some progress, we're gonna skip a little bit here. We will come back to the stuff that we've done.
Stuff the dreams are made of.
Suffice it to say that the Sefer has incredible depth, and we find ourselves going through long conversations to try and understand the concepts that he's putting forward in each paragraph and in each sentence, and in fact in each choice of word. We're going to continue on page LXIII, where it says placement of reading marks. And again, this is part review for us, but I think it's important that we go from here to get a full understanding and a full ability to move through the text. The reading marks are placed on a word, usually on the syllable that's accented. However, there are some marks that have a place that is fixed. So tlisha ktana, tlisha gdola. Tlisha gdola will always go at the beginning of the word.